agreements.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's all good. So the webinar, From Experience to Agreements, European Perspective on Flexible and Reduced Working Time. And we have two great speakers with us here today, and we are recording this webinar, as we know that for a lot of people, this is a very, very stressful time of the year. Before I introduce our speakers, I just want to tell everyone that we have an October webinar coming up on the 29th of October. That is on the topic of how a job guarantee can achieve work time reduction across the economy and catalyze social ecological transformation. So that's our next webinar. We are just starting up a webinar series now again after a bit of a summer break that I hope everyone enjoyed. But yeah, today we are looking at sort of the European perspectives of working time. So we have two different speakers. Our first speaker is India. Hi, India. Now you're visible here on the screen. She's a senior expert at Demos Helsinki, where she's currently working, and she's also an associate director and head of advocacy and funding at the Autonomy Institute. She's also an organizer at the UK Youth Climate Coalition. So a lot of hats on there at the same time. You are a first speaker, but I'm just going to briefly introduce our second speaker, which is Ana. Ana is a coordinator of the European Scientific Project Innova Working, which focuses on innovative, flexible approaches to working time. She's a full professor of labor law at the Carlos Terrero University of Madrid, and she's a principal investigator of the project she's going to be speaking about today. So the way that this webinar is going to be run is India is first going to be speaking for sort of 15-20 minutes. Then we're going to go straight into Anna's presentation that has a similar time. And then we're going to gather all of the questions at the end of the webinar. So if you want to ask questions, if there's any questions that you believe are really important just for understanding, so sort of if there's something that is for clarity, then do please raise your hand or write them in the chat and we'll deal with them immediately. But otherwise you can sort of also write any questions already that you get already now, but we'll take them at the end of both presentations. Perfect. India, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hey, thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. I will share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that? Yes, perfect. Okay. So yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thank you very much to the European Work Time Network for inviting me to speak. I'm going to be presenting an ETUC European Trade Union Confederation study on working time reduction in collective bargaining agreements across Europe. So today's presentation will be split into 4 parts. I'll first go through an introduction to the project itself, and then talk briefly about each of the 3 chapters in the study. The first chapter is a trade union narrative for working time reduction, essentially a literature review on working time reduction. Chapter 2 looks at working time reduction in a selection of collective bargaining agreements that we collected as part of the study. And the third chapter looks at negotiations and the implementation of working time reduction practically. So, project introduction. The report authors for this study are myself from the Autonomy Institute, Hampus Andersson from Kommunal, a Swedish trade union for public services, Grace Weston from the Autonomy Institute, and also Tatiana Pignon, also from the Autonomy Institute. And about the Autonomy Institute, we are a not-for-profit independent research organisation based in the UK. We do most of our work on the future of work, welfare and climate, and we develop policy research and data infrastructure in these areas. And we also run a consultancy service for organisations who want to trial shorter working weeks. And here's a collection of report covers from our different research projects on working time reduction. So ETUCLEX project and this study. So ETUCLEX is the Network for Human Rights, Legal and Strategic Litigation of the European Trade Union Confederation and its affiliates. And this study was on collectively agreed working time reduction with no loss in pay. And I'll put a link to where the report is once I finish speaking as well, in case anyone's interested. So the study has 3 different chapters. The first one, as I said, is this kind of narrative for working time reduction, evidence base for taking into negotiations. Chapter 2 is the range of different collective agreements that we mapped. And chapter 3 is looking at negotiation and implementation considerations for working time reduction. So chapter 1, I'm going to kind of skim over this very briefly. I think probably most people watching will already have a good understanding of what the benefits are of working time reduction. But if anyone has any questions afterwards they want me to go into, then feel free to ask. So this chapter provides an overview of existing data, research and findings related to working time reduction, largely looking at the benefits, and the purpose of it was to provide evidence to be used to support and inform negotiations that trade union organisers are undertaking. And the chapter is organised into 3 sections. So evidence in favour of working time reduction from the perspective of trade unions and workers, from employers, and from the macro and societal perspective as well. So chapter 2, now looking at working time reduction in collective agreements. So as part of the study, then we collected 119 collective agreements via 4 different methods. These were existing examples that the European Trade Union Confederation had in their database. We had a form that we shared between July and October 2024 online for ETUC affiliates and partner trade unions to submit examples of collective agreements. Organisations in our network submitted examples, and we also conducted desk research as well. This sample of 119 agreements, this was mainly between 2010 and 2024, is not representative of all relevant collective agreements in Europe. And there's many local level agreements, for example, that we missed and didn't collect here. But the numbers I'm going to present now are based on this sample that we collected. So I'm going to give an overview of some general analysis of these examples. And in terms of the studies that we collected, then there was a lot of variety between countries, between sectors, between negotiating tactics, and this really demonstrated evidence that working time reduction has many different routes through which trade unions and organisers are really working to achieve it. So we collected agreements from 29 countries in Europe. The most were from Belgium and Germany, followed by Italy, Spain, the Czech Republic, and Portugal and France. And these included most countries in the European Union and also several countries outside of the European Union as well. In terms of sectors, then most of the agreements that we collected were at the sectoral level. This was followed by company level and then national level, but very few agreements we collected at the regional or the municipal level. And in terms of the sectors, then the most common sector of the agreements that we collected was healthcare, followed by manufacturing in the metal and electrical industries, public sector and municipal government, then finance, banking and insurance, and transport and logistics. And there were obviously quite a few more like miscellaneous ones as well. In terms of the types of workers, then about 50% of the agreements that we gathered shared the types of workers that were covered in the agreements. And of those agreements that shared the information, the majority of them covered all types of workers. But some of them specified other types of workers, including covering older workers, blue-collar workers, night workers, shift workers, workers who'd been at the organisation for a long time, and workers who were in high-risk occupations. So most of the agreements covered all workers, but there were some specific types of workers specified. So alongside the general mapping that we did, then we also did some in-depth case studies and analysis of 5 collective agreements. And for these, then we conducted interviews and some additional desk research to fill them out. So the first one I'm going to talk through was in the petroleum industry in Belgium. These were a range of sectoral bargaining agreements from between 1983 and 2023, so over a 40-year period, and negotiated by the union ABVVACCG. So across these agreements, then all types of workers were covered, but the most recent agreement in 2023 covered just shift workers. We don't have the numbers for how many workers were covered in the historical agreements, but in the 2023 agreement, then around 5,000 workers were covered. This agreement and all these agreements saw a weekly reduction in working time. So over that 40-year period, there was a reduction from 38 to 33.6 hours per week. We had this example in here because it shows such a range, kind of a longer term negotiating strategy for working time reduction, even if it was very incremental and small, and also a nationally specific sort of workplace policy mechanism was used as part of the negotiations that I could talk about if anyone has questions later. The second case study we look at is in Scotland from 2024. It was in the public sector and again was a sectoral agreement with the Public and Commercial Services Union. This agreement covered all types of workers, which is around 25,000. Again, this was a weekly reduction and saw a reduction from 37 to 35 hours per week across the Scottish public sector. We included this case study to look at because it included quite a range of different negotiating tactics, including commissioning research and feasibility studies, as well as leveraging quite a significant collective bargaining power that the organisers had. The third case study is in Sweden from 2022 from Kommunal, the public sector trade union. This was again sectoral and covered public sector night workers specifically. So 40,000 night workers were directly affected and 540,000 civil service workers were more broadly affected. If they were to transition into night work, they would be covered by this more directly. This again was a weekly reduction from 36.33 to 34.33 hours per week. And in the negotiations then, Kommunal made use of the fairness argument to make sure that the working conditions of the night workers in their union matched the working conditions of night workers in a sister trade union. So kind of particular negotiating technique there. The fourth case study is in Germany from last year, from IG Metall, the metal workers union, in the steel industry, again at a sectoral level. This covered all types of workers, around 80,000 workers were covered, and included a weekly reduction from 35 hours to 32 hours per week. But this reduction came with a 50% wage compensation. So although they had 3 hours reduction in time, then they had a 1.5 hour reduction in pay. And this was negotiated as an agreement with kind of long-term planning involved, that the industry in Germany is going through transitions, particularly in the context of the green transition and decarbonisation. And this negotiation was done with supporting job protection and long-term protection of jobs in the sector. And then in the fashion industry, this is our fifth case study. This is the only case study at the company level from EssilorLuxottica, which is an eyewear company in Italy from 2023 from 3 different Italian trade unions. The agreement covered all types of workers, but was being introduced in phases, so kind of a gradual rollout across the company. 15,000 workers were covered, and this is an annual reduction. So there's 20 days annually that workers could take, taken fortnightly or every other week. So you could work one week would be a 5-day week, one week would be a 4-day week, and then 5-day, 4-day, like that. And in these negotiations, then 15 of those days were paid for by the company, was just covered by the company, and 5 days were taken from additional individual paid leave. This is separate from annual leave. Additional individual paid leave is a kind of Italian set of leave that unions can negotiate for. So it's kind of partially compensated by additional leave that workers had, but the majority was covered by the company. And now I'm going to run through what we cover in chapter 3. So looking at negotiations and implementation considerations for union negotiators. So some trends that we saw from across this study was that the majority of the reductions in these agreements were between 1 and 3 hours per week. And this is despite there being lots of high-profile examples of organizations with more significant reductions in working time. So you might see the different pilots going on around Europe for a 4-day week. A number of Italian companies are quite famous at the moment for having done it. But the majority of the reductions we've seen in this study are smaller than that. And that progress overall is moving faster in Western and Southern Europe than Northern and Eastern Europe. Working time reduction has been regaining political momentum over the past 4 or 5 years, with the big pilots, with attention from the EU level, etc. The working time reduction is also increasingly necessary to be defending time sovereignty. And we can see, with Germany with IG Metall and the Labour Minister in Germany stepping back from working time reduction. In Greece, the increase of weekly working hours to 48 hours, and the recent political loss in Spain, of reducing hours to 37.5, a narrow loss, but all important flags to the importance of maintaining pressure to be pushing towards this end. So key considerations for negotiation and implementation of working time. So there's 3 key consideration areas for the approach and strategy when negotiating for working time reduction, how you might design your working time reduction in your workplace, and the implementation and evaluation of the working time reduction policy. So for approach and strategy, want to leverage the broader political context and organize at the largest scale possible. So you really want to be aware of where there's political momentum and capitalize on that. Organizing at a larger scale could bring you more significant changes and win more significantly, but you also want to think strategically, so see what is popular and what is being discussed in the political context. For example, if working time reduction isn't potentially flexible working is being talked about, or labor shortages, think about other areas that working time reduction is related to that you could tie it in. Engage, inform, organize and mobilize your workers. Make sure that they have access to information so they're aware of what you're talking about and that it's context specific. Obviously, engaged workers are tantamount to any successful union campaign. Build robust evidence and arguments for working time reduction. So making sure you have relevant information to your context and your sector is really essential, both for knowing how to plan and organize, and also to present and to educate your employers. You want to be strategizing around both short-term and long-term goals, thinking about the IG Metall negotiations, making sure that working time reduction is fitting into kind of a forward-looking, sustainable trade union strategy is important, and also long-term organizational changes and sectoral changes. And engaging with and educating employers, making sure that you're educating them on your terms and that you're sharing information that helps them understand the mutually beneficial potential benefits of working time reduction. So the design of working time reduction. You want to have a preparation phase. This will allow you to consult your workers properly, ensure that any concerns, potential negative impacts, changes to ways of working are properly addressed. You want to think about your model of working time reduction, how the working time reduction is going to be arranged. Will it be reduced across the week, on a certain day per week? If it's a 4-day week, is that the same day off for everyone? Is it an annualized model? How is this going to work? Implementation parameters. So for how protected the time off is it a conditional working time reduction? Is it completely protected? And interaction with existing workplace policies. Will there be any impact on annual leave, for example, or part-time workers? What's the broader impact? And when thinking about working time reduction design, this will be dependent on what level you're negotiating at. At larger scale negotiations, national or sectoral, you probably want to be going with quite a straightforward demand, because it's easier and makes more sense to be calling for a 32-hour week or a 37-hour week, for example. But if you're at the company level, you really want to be thinking about these considerations for how the working time reduction is designed to fit your context specifically. And then implementation and evaluation. So set implementation deadlines and accountability measures for your employer. That might be scrutiny meetings or even paths to collective action if the agreement isn't protected or respected. Assess the impacts on equality within the workplace. This is to do impact assessments to assure that no individual groups are being negatively affected by the policy. And establish monitoring and evaluation processes. These are particularly on your terms, making sure that there are ways to measure the impact it's having, measure any success metrics, and ensure that these are done on the union's terms. So recommendations when bargaining for working time reduction. For trade union leaders, first of all, it's really important to state public and political support for working time reduction. This could be via setting it as an agenda item at National Congress, engaging with the media, putting out public statements, backing it in different contexts is really valuable. Providing funding to conduct relevant research. This could be feasibility studies, sectoral assessments, really supporting your organisers and your unions to have the best possible evidence base to be advocating from. And building capacity and facilitating knowledge sharing. So this is within your union, between unions, attending events, conferences, webinars, and also joining relevant affiliate groups or networks such as the European Work Time Network to make sure that you're as well networked and aware as possible. And all of these things really add credibility for organisers, credibility and confidence essentially. And then recommendations for negotiators, basically what I just said before. So approach and strategy, working time reduction design, and implementation and evaluation. So yeah, leveraging, informing, organising workers, robust evidence, short-term and long-term goals, engaging with employers, preparation, model, parameters, interaction with existing policies, and setting implementation deadlines, accountability measures, impact assessments, and monitoring and evaluation. So concluding reflections for the way forward. Time is one of the most precious things that we have in life, and trade unions represent a really driving force in reducing working time historically and today. We all know that collective bargaining is a powerful tool to redistribute and rebalance power relations, and change is already happening in this field. It's not inevitable, but this working time revolution will be one of the collective struggles of our time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I was looking at my timer. I was about to say, but I was like, oh, but I think she's actually perfectly on time, so I'm not even going to intervene. That was a super interesting presentation. I have so many questions that I've written down already, but I'm going to hold off and I'm going to hand over straight to Anna. Anna is going to present a more sort of zoomed in example of some of the work that is going on here, work time reduction. So I'm going to hand over here to you, Anna. So yeah, we can see your presentation at the moment in that sort of smaller zoomed.
So. Thank you so much. Sorry, I mute. Just a moment. Just a moment. Yeah. Oof. Sorry. Yeah, I try again.
Yeah, not a problem.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm not sure if you can. see my PowerPoint presentation?
At the moment, we're seeing a sort of web browser
Sorry,
of Innova working.
I try. Share. Mhm.
It's
I
just because
open.
it worked so
Yeah,
perfectly
yeah,
when we
yeah, yeah.
tried
Yeah,
before.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's all good.
yeah. I think so. We can. Sorry. Mhm. I can see my PowerPoint.
Did you accidentally close the whole document when
Yeah,
you closed it?
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, yeah. Perhaps. I don't know what happened. Well, I try again. It's open. Share. Yeah, I think so right now.
Now it's working.
Yeah, and right now, just a moment. I have many windows. Yeah, it's okay. I think so.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Alexandra, and the invitation. For me, it's a great pleasure to be here in this webinar. And I'm very happy to share, my presentation with India. No, she is a very great researcher, and I usually learn a lot from her. Well, I'm going to present the findings of the European project Innova Working. I'm the coordinator of the Innova Working project, but we are a very large, big team. No, the team is composed by academics from 6 countries: Spain, Finland, the Netherlands, Ireland, Hungary, and well, in addition, we are very lucky because we had the participation of the most representative trade union in Spain, UGT and Comisiones Obreras, and at European level, the European Trade Union Confederation was part of the European project. Then this was a very great opportunity to learn more about this topic. We presented the findings on 12th June in the European Parliament. Well, we share the findings, with policymakers, with experts from the European Union. And today is a great opportunity to share the findings of this project. This project has a double approach because we analyze working time reduction, and in addition, we analyze flexible working time arrangement, both of them, because 6 countries with different industrial relation system, sometimes it's difficult to find, innovative cases about working time reduction in countries such as Ireland, Hungary, in Spain. It's true that we have some very interesting cases, even in the Netherlands, in France, of course. No, France, is the first country, to reduce the maximum working time some years ago. And we analyze not only innovative cases what work, we analyze why some cases didn't work, and the main grounds in this sense. Our projects focus on collective agreement because, we think, I think there are small laws, it's true, but sometimes include big labor rights, and very, very useful for employees as a business association. In this sense, in our research, we analyze, traditional sector where it is easy to find innovative cases about working time reduction, flexible working time arrangement. However, we analyze, not very common sectors: manufacturing, construction, accommodation, and food service activities. Very interesting in Spain, no? Well, the idea is try to cover the most of sectors. However, it's true that innovative cases, our innovative cases, are about one company, two companies, and not cover all the sector. However, we found some cases, for instance, in the Netherlands, where the construction sector, well, is a very useful case where we cover all the sector, no? All the sector, reduce the maximum working time for employees older than 55 years. In the Innova Working project, we have some milestones. We finished all of them because we concluded in June 2025. And one of the most relevant, milestone is our ebook. No, it's open. It's in English, of course, and we saw innovative cases about working time reduction, flexible working time arrangement in six countries. No, in addition, in our website, we have, the survey, the features, comparative report, many useful material, no? And we hope this material will be useful for next research, no, about the same topic. Well, some findings about Innova Working project, no? In our research, we found that the discussion has focused on more working time reduction than flexible working time. No, it's more popular, it's more interesting. No, working time reduction. However, we found that it's very relevant. Companies started, to establish flexible working time arrangement, because there is a link between both of them, where the company introduced pilot programs on working time reduction. Well, before, company try to install, to practice flexible working time arrangement. Then there is a link between both of them. It's useful for companies, first try to explore flexible working time arrangement. The second step in our research is, introduce working time reduction. Well, the pandemic. It's true that the pandemic, if we think about flexible working time arrangement, is the key. No, is the key. No, we conclude in our research that after the pandemic, experience a pilot about flexible working time arrangement, remote work. Well, there is a trend in the sense that reduce, remote work, teleworking. However, where the power of trade union is greater, well, pilot initiatives on flexible working time arrangement have continues to function well. Then the power of trade union is so relevant in this sense. More findings. Well, we analyze flexible working time arrangement, remote work, teleworking. We try to show that it's possible, in not traditional sectors. No, for instance, metal industry. We have some very innovative cases where remote work, a partial, part-time remote work, no all the time. It's very useful for employees, and not there is no reduction of productivity. No, it is the same productivity. Productivity maintains the same result. More findings. Well, When we analyze 6 countries with different industrial relation system, we can see that the innovation on working time reduction, flexible working time arrangement depends on collective bargaining structures. Where collective bargaining structures are not, very strong, well, it's very difficult, it's very hard to find innovative cases on working time reduction. Then, for instance, in Spain, trade unions has a fundamental right to negotiate, no? And it's true that we have a fundamental right plus, a very strong legal framework. Then it's a protected right, no? Then our collective agreement is very, very strong. We have a very high coverage of employees, around 90% of employees are protected by collective agreement. Then it's easier to innovate in this issue, no? Working time reduction. More things. Well, when we analyze the topic, one very relevant issue is that, 4 days working week depends on, the sector, depends on worker profile, depends on the funding model. Then we think that they are not, the same system for every company. Every company is different. Then into the same company, there are different employees with different tasks. Then it's relevant to innovate in this sense, but try to address the differences, and try not to implement the same rules for every company and even into the same company. In our interviews, when we try to find innovative cases, we conclude that it's a tool, working time reduction is a tool to attract and retain talent. No, this is a very relevant issue in our research. It's true that, we need companies make efforts to address this issue, because when we try to analyze the topic working time reduction, in the end is the organizational power of companies. If companies want to reduce the organizational power, then it's possible, to implement 4 days working week. Then we need a different culture of working time, a very new culture of working time. More findings. Well, in our research, we conclude there is a bridge between working time reduction and the right to disconnect. This is very relevant, very useful. We need to, introduce limit, and enhance this right across European Union. It's true that we have some national regulation in France and in Spain. In my opinion, it's better the regulation in France. There are another countries, of course, Portugal. There are many countries with a regulation. However, in our research, we conclude that the right to disconnect is not yet a labor right protected at a European level. No, we wish a European regulation. For instance, in the Netherlands, collective agreement try to regulate this issue, but the result is not very good. One thing very relevant, is the health and safety. Health and safety and working time reduction. We observe, we see an ambivalent nature of health and safety, because it's true that this kind of practice of pilot improve health and safety, but companies need to follow, need to control, need to enhance these rights, no? Because in this landscape where there is flexibility for employees, autonomy for employees, it's well, there is a trend to, you know, to reduce, no, this right, but you know, it's the employee, no, it's the employee who reduce, no, who not protect the health and safety right. And final remarks only two. Well, if I wonder, is necessary to reduce working hours across the European Union, in Spain? Well, my answer is yes. No, I think this is the way. This is the way to innovate, to introduce a new cultural working time across the European Union. And so far today, well, this kind of pilot introduce positive effect, motivation by business consideration, attract talent, no? Well, it's true that this group of companies which have innovative cases, it's true that if we implement these innovative cases in, you know, in all the companies, there is a risk reduce, you know, the innovation, in the sense that these companies need to innovate again, no, to attract talent. No, they need another thing, another practice in this sense. However, it's very positive, and this is the way, in my opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. So now I will invite questions from people in the audience, but I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to sort of formulate these questions, and I'm going to take that opportunity to push in my own questions there. And I'm not going to take all of them because I've made a lot of notes while you guys are speaking. Thank you very much. And there are quite some interesting overlaps between both of your presentations, so they link quite nicely into each other. So India, for you, I have which one should I choose? I was really interested with the 5 different cases that you presented, and they all looked very different in terms of how they approached work time reduction and how they were working around these. And I wanted to know a little bit more about those, if you could talk about them, and specifically the questions that sort of popped into my head is, firstly, you started with Belgium, I think, which have moved quite a low weekly working time, especially with the sort of the context we know about Belgium. So for those of you that looked in our networks newsletters, we've seen that Belgium has had quite a sort of turbulent history with work time reduction. So why do you think, how does this sort of relatively, I know that you said it was relatively small and over a long time, but still there's an almost 5-hour work time reduction there that is quite substantially lower than the European average. And then I was also wondering if you could develop a bit on the case of IG Metall, because like you said, their motivation, a lot of the other motivations you talked about was this health and safety, importance of the worker and the sort of individual, while IG Metall seems to be arguing based on the industry future. They're looking at this sort of automatization, the job protection. So were their negotiation strategies different, and if so how were they different, and how might that impact unions that are looking? And then also, so I'm going to ask Anna a couple of questions, so you have some time to think about them and after your presentation. I find it really interesting that what you've been talking about, how sort of innovative work approaches and collective bargaining, that they are positively correlated. So I'm wondering first, like, how did you guys find that? Was there more a feeling as you were looking at things, or is there very specific points that can show that this links exist? And I was also wondering if because you had 6 different countries, I think you said, did you have any very country specific insights or anything specific that differed between, because you had some countries that are a little bit less rare if we're looking in the publications and the information that we have. So maybe if anyone else has any questions, please post them in the chat or raise your hand as we go along. But Indy, if you could start answering those questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alex. Very good questions. I've had to be refreshing my memory of the report and all the research that we did. But yeah, so yeah, very interesting for the Belgian case in the petroleum sector. And we heard in the interview that traditionally then this sector has very good working conditions in Belgium. And I'd assume it's because of the collective bargaining power that they have, and that the sector is an energy producing sector and there's good coverage. So they have a lot of leverage there. In terms of the negotiation approaches, then they argued around supporting workers' longevity in their careers, that workers are required for long hours, working in quite tough working conditions, and therefore that having these working time reductions, particularly when they've been introduced quite incrementally, could be made quite well on that argument around the health and safety and longevity arguments. Also, the mechanism of introducing the working time reduction in Belgium was around using RTT, which is Réduction du temps de travail, which is a policy in France and Belgium. And it's if a worker works beyond the standard working week, then they may accrue additional like leave as this RTT. It's kind of called time off in lieu in the UK. There's like an equivalent. So if like a worker worked 42 hours in a week, then they might be able to take, you know, that 2 hours back, or those 5 hours back another time. And this RTT was the kind of unit of negotiation for the reduction. And I have here in the thing that in 1999 they negotiated 1 additional day for the whole year of RTT, and then in 2000 they negotiated 2 additional days for the whole year. So then they accrued over time to then be like a half-hour or 20-minute reduction per day over time. But yeah, I think essentially very good working conditions in this sector as a result of strong collective bargaining leverage. And in the case of Germany, then yeah, as you said, then the negotiations were done with sectoral longevity and job protection in mind, and that the sector in the steel industry is undergoing quite significant transformation, driven by transitions from blast furnace methods in the steel industry to more sustainable hydrogen-based technologies. And this green transition is increasing the need for workers at the moment while the transitions are being put into place. But once the transition is done, then fewer workers will be needed because some production processes will become obsolete. And so this agreement was to basically support more sustainable employment, and provide good work-life balance and longer-term job security. But ultimately, in terms of the negotiating strategies, I suppose there's kind of an open dialogue with the employers throughout this, and awareness of the processes that the company's undergoing and the industry's undergoing to meet the needs of the transition. But there were massive strikes as well. They did go on they took collective action, and 23,500 workers went on strike at the end of 2023. And they went, yeah, it ultimately involved 30,000 workers. So they're leveraging their negotiating strategy ended up just being strikes as well, which was effective.
Just a quick question on following on that, because you were talking about paths to collective action. What did you mean by it? Could you just clarify that in a sentence or two as something that was important?
In the German case, or more generally?
But more generally, you said, like, because you're talking about that now, and you said that paths to collective action is an important part of sort of future strategies.
Yeah. So
What
I
do you mean by
suppose having an understanding of when union members will be willing to go on strike and under what conditions they would be willing to withdraw their labor and not be paid.
Thank you so much. Anna, I'm going to hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Alexandra. Well, how to select, how to choose our cases? Well, our project lasted 2 years. In the first years, the main task was to choose, innovative cases, in 6 countries. And then we prepare a survey. This is a deliverable of the innovative project, and we apply the survey in Spain, and in the rest of the countries. Our result in Spain was well, fine, in the sense that we obtained around 100 answers of workers representatives. The idea is, well, we need to find to obtain a general perspective of the company. Then one employee perhaps is a personal opinion. We need the opinion, the assessment of a worker representative of the company. Then we prepare a survey, and the idea is this survey should be filled by worker representatives across European Union. And then in Spain, for instance, we selected innovative cases, because the idea is only ask innovative companies, not every company. We need, a tool to find innovative cases, in the 6 countries. Then this is a way, to choose our cases. And the second question, what about, well, one special finding in one country? Well, I would like to speak about Spain because I'm from Spain. Well, in Spain, it's true that it's very relevant, the size of the company. No, when we speak about small companies, the most of companies in Spain are small and medium companies. Then what about the difficulties, for them? Well, in our research, we found some innovative cases of small and medium companies. One of them is Software del Sol. Software del Sol is a IT company in Jaén. It's a small province in Spain, and we found very innovative cases about small and medium companies. Thank you. Thank you. Mute. You are muted.
I am sorry, and here I am. It's also my colleagues. I've now entered the office. I've said I provided a link to the Innova working in the chat. I hope that's the right one. And I see that India has provided links to the ETUC study, and a link to the next network webinar. Thank you very much for that. I would like to thank you both so much for participating in this webinar. It's been excellent to hear your insights. It's also really excellent to hear that there are so many things that are happening in and around Europe on work time reduction. We have, as I said at the start of this webinar, we have a webinar coming up in October. We always have our webinars at the Wednesdays at the end of the month. And the next webinar is going to be looking at the job guarantee in relation to work time reduction and how that could be acting as a sort of catalyst for positive and progressive change. We're also having, we're going to be sharing soon with the wider network information about our yearly members event and some exciting things that's happening on a European level. So keep an eye out for some of our communications. Looking at the time, I'm going to wrap up the webinar here. Thank you for all that joined us. Thank you again to our speakers, India and Anna. And I hope to see you guys in, soon. Bye, everyone. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Hannah.
much. Very nice day.